I cut my trip short and pulled into the driveway to see a police cruiser at my basement light on. I heard my 9-year-old daughter screaming. I ran downstairs and saw a deputy with her body cam accidentally off while my daughter's hands were zip-tied to a pipe. My husband stood there filming, laughing. "Let's see if mom saves you." The deputy turned and barked, "What are you doing here?" Their last grave mistake, they touched my daughter. The gravel crunched under my tires as I cut the engine, and immediately I knew something was wrong. The business trip to Denver was supposed to last 3 days. I'd made it 18 hours before the gnawing in my stomach, mother's instinct, my own mother used to call it, forced me to book an earlier flight home. Something about Marcus's last text had felt off. "Everything's fine here. Lily's being good." Too casual. Too clean. He never texted like that. In 12 years of marriage, Marcus had never once described our daughter as simply being good. She was brilliant, creative, stubborn, hilarious, exhausting, never just good. Now I understood why. A Riverside County Sheriff's cruiser sat in my driveway like a predator claiming territory. Its red and blue lights were off, but the engine still ticked with residual heat. Fresh arrival. The basement light glowed through the narrow window at ground level, a light that should never be on. Lily was terrified of the basement. Had been since she was 4 and fell down those stairs, splitting her lip on the concrete floor while Marcus and I were upstairs arguing about his mother's latest criticism of my work schedule. My daughter's scream cut through the October night air. Not a tantrum scream. Not an angry scream. Terror. Pure, animal terror that mothers recognize in their bones, the sound that makes your milk let down and in your heart stop and your hands shake with adrenaline before your conscious mind even processes what you're hearing. I was out of the car and running before rational thought kicked in. The front door stood ajar, another wrongness that made my skin crawl. I pushed through, my heels clicking against hardwood as I flew toward the basement door. My briefcase hit the hallway wall and spilled papers across the floor. Legal documents scattered like autumn leaves. None of it mattered. "Mom." Lily's voice cracked with desperation from somewhere below. "Mom. Please." The basement door gaped open like a wound. Light spilled up the stairs, casting harsh shadows against the walls lined with family photos, happier times when we believed in forever. I took the steps 3 at a time, my business suit jacket catching on the rough wooden handrail Marcus had installed himself during one of his brief home improvement phases. What I saw at the bottom stopped my heart. Lily sat on the concrete floor, her small wrists zip-tied to the exposed water pipe that ran along the basement wall. Her school clothes, the purple unicorn shirt I bought her last month because she begged for it in Target, claiming unicorns were scientifically fascinating, were dirty and torn at the shoulder. Tear tracks carved clean lines down her dirt-smudged cheeks. Her green eyes, so much like mine, were wide with shock and fear and something else. Something that looked like betrayal, as if the world had just revealed itself to be a much darker place than she'd ever imagined. But it wasn't just Lily that froze my blood. A Riverside County deputy stood over my daughter, her body camera conspicuously dark. No red recording light. Deputy M. Torres, according to her nameplate. Mid-30s, blonde hair pulled back in a regulation bun, hand resting casually on her service weapon like she was posing for a recruitment poster. She looked at me with a flat, assessing stare of someone comfortable with power, someone who'd learned that authority was something you wore like armor. And Marcus, my husband of 12 years, father to my child, the man who'd once cried when Lily took her first steps, stood in the corner with his phone raised, recording everything. His face lit up with genuine amusement, like he was watching a particularly entertaining movie. Like our daughter's terror was content for his personal highlight reel. "Let's see if mom saves you," he said to his phone, narrating like some twisted documentarian. "This should be good." The deputy turned toward me, her expression shifting from casual authority to something harder. More dangerous. More personal. "What are you doing here?" The question hit me like a physical blow. What was I doing here? In my own home? In the house where I painted nursery walls and kissed scraped knees and read bedtime stories? Where my daughter was now restrained like an animal while these two stood over her like she was entertainment. Something cold and primal uncoiled in my chest. Something that had been sleeping for 34 years, waiting for exactly this moment. The thing that lived in mothers' hearts, the ancient programming that turned ordinary women into forces of nature when their children were threatened. "That's my daughter." My voice came out level, controlled. Lawyer voice? The voice that had won custody cases and faced down district attorneys and convinced juries that reasonable doubt was more than just a legal concept. "And this is my house." Deputy Torres shifted her weight, hand moving closer to her weapon. The movement was practiced, automatic. "Ma'am, you need to step back. This is an active investigation." Investigation of what? I stepped down another stair, closing distance. The basement smelled like dust and fear and something else, something chemical and wrong. What crime did my 9-year-old daughter commit that requires restraints? Marcus laughed, actually laughed, and adjusted his phone angle to get a better shot. "Tell her about the drugs, Torres." My blood turned to ice water. "What drugs?" We received a tip about narcotics on the premises, Torres said, her voice taking on the practiced cadence of someone reciting from a script she'd memorized but didn't quite believe. During our search, your daughter became combative and had to be restrained for officer safety. I looked at Lily, all 60 pounds of her, wrists raw from struggling against plastic restraints, terror making her whole body shake like a leaf in a storm. Combative. Right. My daughter, who cried when she accidentally stepped on ants, who insisted we capture spiders in cups and release them outside because they have families too. Combative. Where's your warrant? I asked. Torres's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Attell. Your husband gave consent to search. I didn't consent to anything. I moved down another step, my heels echoing against the concrete walls. And I didn't consent to you traumatizing my child. Mom, I tried to run away but she grabbed me, Lily whispered, her voice small and broken like something precious that had been dropped. I told them you were coming home but they said you wouldn't want me anymore after they found the stuff. What stuff? I wanted to ask, but the answer was crystallizing with horrible clarity. The reason Marcus had been so eager for me to take this trip. The reason he'd insisted I stay the full 3 days, claiming he wanted alone time with Lily. The reason he'd been so confident, so smug, these past few weeks, like he was sitting on a secret that would change everything. He was setting me up. The stuff they planted, I said quietly. Torres's hand moved to her weapon grip, fingers curling around the handle. That's a serious accusation, ma'am. Is it? I reached the bottom of the stairs, my heels clicking against concrete that still bore the faint stain from Lily's accident years ago. Because I'm wondering why your body camera is off during what should be routine evidence documentation. The deputy's eyes flicked to Marcus, then back to me. Attell. A connection. They were coordinating, and not very well. Camera malfunctioned, she said. Did it malfunction before or after you zip-tied a third grader to a pipe? After she became combative. Show me the footage of her being combative. Camera was already malfunctioned by then. I smiled. Not a pleasant smile. The smile that had made opposing counsel request continuances and judges pay closer attention to my arguments. The smile that said I'd found the weakness in your story and I was about to exploit it until it bled. How convenient. Marcus stepped forward, still holding his phone like it was a shield against reality. Just cooperate, Sarah. Make this easy on everyone. Everyone. Like we were all in this together. Like the dissolution of our family was a team sport where everyone could win if we just follow the rules he'd written in secret. Put the phone down, Marcus. I don't think so. His smile was all teeth, no warmth. The smile I'd once found charming, back when I thought it meant he was confident rather than calculating. This is evidence. Documentation of your behavior during a lawful police action. Evidence. I almost laughed. He really thought he was clever. Thought he'd cornered me with his elaborate scheme, his fake emergency, his carefully orchestrated crisis. 12 years of marriage, and he still didn't understand who I was at my core. Still didn't understand that cornering me was like cornering a wildcat, dangerous for everyone involved. I turned back to Torres, studying her face with a clinical detachment I'd learned in law school. Looking for tells, for weaknesses, for the cracks in her performance. Deputy, I need you to remove those restraints from my daughter. Now. She stays restrained until the scene is secure. The scene is my basement. My daughter is not a suspect or a threat. She's a victim, and you're victimizing her further. She was interfering with a lawful search. She's 9 years old. My voice cracked on the last word, anger finally bleeding through the professional facade I'd been maintaining. Lily whimpered at the sound, and something inside me shifted. Evolved. Became something harder and more dangerous than it had been moments before. They had touched my daughter. Not just physically, though the raw marks on her wrists were enough to justify anything I was about to do. They had terrorized her. Made her believe her own mother wouldn't want her. Used her as bait in whatever sick game Marcus was playing with our lives. They had made her small and afraid in a world where she should feel safe and loved and protected. They had made her doubt that I would save her. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice dropping to a conversational tone that somehow carried more menace than shouting ever could. You're going to remove those restraints. You're going to turn your camera on. You're going to document the fact that you restrained a child without probable cause during an allegedly consensual search. And then you're going to call your supervisor and explain why you thought any of this was appropriate. Torres laughed, a short, harsh sound like breaking glass. Or what? The question hung in the basement air like smoke from a distant fire, acrid and warning of worse things to come. Or what? They really didn't know who they were dealing with. Marcus, I said without taking my eyes off the deputy. How much did you pay her? His phone wavered slightly in his grip. What are you talking about? Deputy Torres doesn't work Riverside County. I checked the department roster last month when you got that speeding ticket on the 60. She works San Bernardino County. So either she's way outside her jurisdiction for a simple drug tip, or she's not actually a deputy at all. Torres's hand dropped from her weapon. Just slightly. But enough to tell me I'd hit something true. The uniform's real, I continued, my voice taking on the rhythm of a closing argument. Good quality. Probably cost you a few $100s. But the badge is wrong. Riverside County badges have the county seal, the Spanish mission with the orange tree. Yours has the state seal. Easy mistake if you ordered it online without doing your research. Marcus had gone very still. His phone was still recording, but his face had lost that amused confidence. Now he looked like a man watching his carefully constructed house of cards begin to sway in an unexpected wind. The car outside is real too. Probably stolen from an impound lot, or maybe you have a friend in the department who owed you a favor. But the plates are expired, I saw them when I pulled in. 6 months expired. Real cops don't drive cars with expired plates. Torres stepped back, putting distance between herself and me. Her hand moved back toward her weapon, a mistake that told me everything I needed to know about her training. Or lack thereof. Real cops didn't telegraph their intentions like that. You're bluffing, Marcus said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Now he sounded like a man trying to convince himself more than anyone else. Am I? I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over the screen. Should we call the real Riverside County Sheriff's Department and ask them to verify Deputy Torres's credentials? I have the non-emergency number saved in my contacts. Very convenient for a criminal defense attorney. The basement went dead silent except for Lily's ragged breathing and the distant hum of the water heater cycling on. You set this whole thing up, I said, pieces falling into place like puzzle pieces I should have seen months ago. The late-night phone calls Marcus claimed were work-related. The sudden interest in my travel schedule. The way he'd been pushing for me to take more business trips, claiming he wanted to spend quality time with Lily. The business trip. The early morning call from your client that required you to take Lily to school, which gave you access to my car, my purse, my house keys while I was rushing to catch my flight. Marcus's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. You planted whatever you planted while I was gone, then called in your fake tip to your fake deputy. The plan was to have me come home tomorrow to find Lily traumatized and drugs in my house. You'd have video of me obstructing justice or assaulting an officer. Evidence for the custody hearing that would make me look unfit, unstable, dangerous. That's insane, he whispered. Is it? Because you've been pushing for sole custody for months. Your lawyer's been asking for emergency hearings based on my increasingly erratic behavior. Behavior that coincidentally started right around the time you began documenting everything with that phone of yours. Every argument, every moment of frustration, every time I've been tired or stressed or human. I gestured to the device in his hands, still recording, still gathering evidence for a case that would never see court. The drugs aren't even real, are they? I asked Torres. Because you'd need real drugs to make real charges stick, and that would mean involving real police. Can't have real police asking real questions about why you're freelancing for angry husbands. Can't have them wondering why you're operating outside your jurisdiction without backup or proper documentation. Torres's composure finally cracked. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm a family law attorney, remember? I've seen this play before. Husband wants out of marriage but doesn't want to pay support. Husband doesn't want to split assets or deal with custody arrangements that treat both parents as equals. Husband manufactures crisis to paint wife as unfit parent. Husband gets custody, house, savings account, and freedom from alimony. I stepped closer to Torres, close enough to smell her perfume, too much of it, like she was trying to cover the scent of fear and cheap fabric softener. What I don't know is how much he paid you to terrorize my daughter. But I'm curious about the going rate for fake police work these days. Is it hourly, or do you charge a flat fee for child abuse? Torres drew her weapon. The movement was clumsy, desperate. Not the smooth draw of someone with real training, but the panicked grab of someone in over their head. She held the gun like it was foreign to her hands, finger on the trigger instead of alongside the frame, muzzle wavering as her hands shook. Back off, she said. Lily screamed. The sound cut through me like glass, and suddenly the cold calculation in my mind gave way to something much more primitive. Much more dangerous. The thing that lived in mothers' hearts, the ancient programming that had once helped our ancestors protect their young from predators with nothing but determination and fury. You just made your last mistake, I said. Torres's eyes darted to Marcus, seeking guidance, reassurance, some indication that this was still under control. You said she'd cooperate. You said she'd fold when she saw the evidence. She will. But Marcus's voice shook as he said it, and we all heard the doubt. Sarah, just do what she says. Think about Lily. I'm thinking about Lily. I'm thinking about my daughter who's been zip-tied to a pipe while 2 adults terrorize her for money. I took a step forward, and Torres raised the gun higher. Put the weapon down, Torres. Now. Before you make this so much worse for yourself. I'm the one with the gun. Are you? I smiled again, and this time I let her see all the rage I'd been keeping leashed. All the maternal fury that had been building since I'd heard my daughter scream. Because from where I stand, you're a civilian who just drew a weapon on a mother in her own home while illegally restraining a child. That's not law enforcement. That's kidnapping. Assault. Terroristic threatening. I took another step forward. And I'm a criminal defense attorney who knows exactly how the law works when mothers protect their children from people who threaten them with weapons. Another step. Castle Doctrine. Stand your ground. Defense of others. Justifiable homicide and protection of family members. Torres's hands shook as she held the gun, and I could see the moment she realized she was in over her head. Way over her head. This wasn't supposed to be complicated. It was supposed to be easy money, a favor for a friend, maybe a little excitement in an otherwise boring life. It wasn't supposed to involve actual violence or real consequences. I will end you, I said quietly, and meant every word. Not because I want to. Not because I'm angry. But because you threatened my child, and that makes you a problem that needs solving. Sarah, Marcus started. Shut up, Marcus. I didn't look at him. Couldn't look at him without losing focus, without letting the betrayal and hurt cloud my judgment. Your fake deputy here has about 10 seconds to put that gun down and release my daughter before I show her what a real mistake looks like. Torres's breathing came fast and shallow. Panic breathing. The gun wavered in her grip like a compass needle seeking true north. She's bluffing, Marcus said, but his voice was thin. Desperate. Sarah doesn't, she's not violent. She's never. I'm not violent by nature, I agreed, my eyes never leaving Torres's face. I believe in due process. Legal remedies. Civilized solutions to complex problems. I've spent my entire career working within the system to help families resolve their conflicts peacefully. I took another step forward, and the gun barrel trembled. But you made this personal when you put your hands on my daughter. You made it primal. And the thing about mothers, Deputy Torres, is that we stop being civilized when our children are threatened. We stop caring about consequences and legal niceties and what other people might think. We become something much older and much more dangerous. The gun shook harder in her hands. 10 years from now, I continued, if you're very lucky, you'll be getting out of prison and trying to rebuild your life with a felony record and a reputation as someone who terrorizes children for money. If you're not lucky, you'll be explaining to a jury why you thought it was reasonable to draw a weapon on an unarmed woman in her own basement while her illegally restrained child watched. Torres looked at Marcus again, seeking guidance that wasn't coming. He stood frozen, phone still in hand, finally understanding that his clever plan had just become his worst nightmare. Of course, I said, that's assuming you live long enough to see a courtroom. The words hung in the air like a promise. Like an oath sworn on something sacred. Torres's resolve cracked completely. The gun dropped to her side, though she didn't release it entirely. Her face had gone pale, and I could see sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool basement air. This is insane, she whispered. This is motherhood, I corrected. This is what happens when you threaten something more precious to me than my own life. Now cut my daughter loose. She hesitated, looking between Marcus and me like we might somehow work out a compromise that would let her salvage this situation. Let her walk away with her money and her skin intact. There was no compromise. Not anymore. The moment they'd put restraints on my child, they'd crossed the line that couldn't be uncrossed. They'd entered territory where normal rules didn't apply, where the only law was the ancient code that protected young from predators. I moved. Not toward Torres, toward the workbench along the far wall where Marcus kept his tools. My fingers closed around the handle of a claw hammer, its weight familiar and reassuring. I'd helped him build Lily's treehouse with his hammer. Had used it to hang pictures of our family on walls that would soon belong to lawyers and judges and custody evaluators. Now it felt like justice in my hands. Torres raised the gun again, but her hands shook so badly I doubted she could hit the broadside of a barn. Stay back. Sarah, stop. Marcus's voice cracked with panic. Jesus Christ, just stop. This has gone too far. I turned the hammer in my grip, feeling its balance. Testing its heft. Cut her loose, Torres. Last warning. You're threatening a police officer. You're not a police officer. You're a criminal who made the mistake of targeting my child for your little theatrical performance. I stepped closer, hammer held casually at my side. Not threatening, exactly, but not hidden either. Available. Ready. Torres's finger moved to the trigger, and I saw the moment she made her decision. Saw the panic take over, the amateur's response to a situation spiraling beyond her control. Don't, I said softly. Because if you pull that trigger, if you fire a weapon in a basement with a child present, if you add reckless endangerment of a minor to your growing list of charges, I will take that gun away from you and beat you to death with it. The certainty in my voice surprised even me. But it was true. Absolutely, completely true. If she endangered Lily any further, if she added the trauma of gunfire to everything else she'd already done, I would kill her with my bare hands if necessary. With the hammer if it was easier. With whatever tool came to hand. Torres saw the truth in my eyes. Saw the complete absence of bluff or bravado or civilized restraint. Just cold, maternal calculation and the promise of consequences she wasn't prepared to face. She lowered the gun. Good choice, I said. Now cut the restraints. With shaking hands, Torres pulled a knife from her belt and approached Lily. My daughter pressed herself against the pipe, trying to get as far from the fake deputy as possible, her eyes wide with continued terror. It's okay, baby, I said, my voice gentle now. She's going to cut you loose, and then we're going to deal with this mess. Mommy's here now. The zip ties parted with small plastic snaps that seemed unnaturally loud in the basement quiet. Lily rubbed her wrists, red marks angry against her pale skin, then scrambled across the basement floor to me on hands and knees like a much younger child seeking safety. I wrapped my arms around her, feeling her small body shake against mine. She was safe. Scared and traumatized and probably going to need therapy, but safe. Alive. Unhurt beyond the marks on her wrists and the damage to her trust in the world's basic goodness. Mom, she whispered against my shoulder. I thought you wouldn't come home. They said you were done with me, that you were going to let them take me away. I will always come home to you, I said fiercely, smoothing her hair with one hand while keeping the hammer ready in the other. Always. No matter what anyone tells you, no matter what happens, I will always fight to get back to you. Over Lily's head, I stared at Marcus. My husband. The father of my child. The man who had once promised to love and protect our family, who had stood at an altar and sworn oaths that apparently meant less to him than winning a custody battle. 12 years, I said. He flinched to the flatness in my voice. 12 years of marriage. 9 years of raising our daughter together. Building a life, a home, a family. And this is how you want it to end? With fake police and planted evidence and traumatizing our child? It wasn't supposed to go this way, he said weakly, and I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. She was supposed to cooperate, to make it easy. You were supposed to come home tomorrow and just accept it. Accept what? That you'd framed me? That you terrorized our daughter to get leverage in a divorce proceeding? I needed evidence. His composure finally snapped, and the calm, calculating man I'd been married to dissolved into something desperate and ugly. For the custody hearing. Your work schedule, the way you prioritize your cases over family time, the way you're never here when she needs you. So you hired someone to traumatize our daughter instead of having an adult conversation about our problems? You never listen. His voice rose to almost a shout. Every time I try to talk to you about anything, you shut me down with logic and legal precedent and that voice you're using right now. Like you're cross-examining me instead of talking to your husband. This voice? You mean the voice of someone who's had enough of your passive-aggressive crap? The voice of someone who just discovered that her husband is willing to traumatize their child for strategic advantage? Lily stirred in my arms, making small distressed sounds at the raised voices. I was scaring her with my anger, losing control when she needed me to be strong and steady and safe. I took a breath. Reset. Forced my voice back to a calm, controlled tone. Torres, I said without looking at the fake deputy. You have two choices. You can leave now, walk up those stairs, get in your stolen police car, and drive away. Or you can stay and explain to actual police officers why you thought this was a good idea. She was already moving toward the stairs before I finished speaking, gun still in her hand but held down at her side like dead weight. If I see you near my daughter again, I called after her, if I see you near my house, if I even hear that you've been asking questions about my family, I will make sure you spend the next decade in prison. Do we understand each other? Her footsteps on the wooden stairs, quick and desperate, were answer enough. Marcus and I stared at each other across the basement, our daughter between us like a bridge we'd both tried to burn. The silence stretched long and uncomfortable, filled with the weight of broken promises and destroyed trust. It's over, Marcus, I said finally. Whatever we had, whatever we were trying to save, it's done. Sarah, no. You crossed the line. You involved our child in your revenge fantasy. You hired someone to terrorize her so you could get better divorce terms. He held up the phone, still recording. I have everything recorded. Your threats, your behavior, the way you handled this situation. Your evidence of what? Me protecting my daughter from people who were threatening her? I almost laughed. Submit that to the court. Please. Let a family court judge see exactly what kind of man you are. The phone wavered in his grip as reality began to set in. You set up an elaborate fraud to gain custody of a child you were willing to traumatize for strategic advantage, I continued. You hired a fake police officer to restrain a 9-year-old and terrorize her with threats that her mother had abandoned her. How do you think that's going to play with a family court judge? His face crumpled as the full scope of his situation finally sank in. The clever plan that was going to solve all his problems had just become the thing that would destroy any chance he had of maintaining a relationship with his daughter. I just wanted, he started, then stopped, because there was no way to finish that sentence that didn't make him sound like a monster. You wanted to punish me for being successful. For prioritizing my career. For not being the wife you thought you married when we were both 22 and stupid. I shifted Lily's weight in my arms, her breathing finally starting to slow toward normal. But punishment was supposed to be your burden, not hers. She never asked to be born into this mess. Through the basement window, I heard Torres's fake police car start up and pull away with a squeal of tires on asphalt. Soon she'd be just another bad memory, another cautionary tale about people who mistook desperation for intelligence. Another criminal who learned too late that there were some lines you didn't cross, some people you didn't threaten, some mistakes that couldn't be undone. Marcus was a different problem entirely. More complicated. More personal. The betrayal cut deeper because it came from someone who was supposed to love us, supposed to protect us, supposed to put our daughter's well-being above his own wounded pride. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice taking on the clinical tone I used for settlement negotiations. You're going to pack your things and leave. Tonight. Tomorrow I'm filing for divorce and full custody, and I'm going to include every detail of this evening in my petition. You can't prove, can't I? I gestured around the basement with my free hand. You think I don't know about the bag of oregano you planted in my car? You think I won't find whatever else you hid while I was gone? You think Torres won't roll over on you the moment real police start asking questions? His eyes widened. He'd hidden more than I'd guessed, and my confident assessment told him I was already 3 steps ahead of his planning. 12 years, Marcus. I know how you think. I know your tells. I know you're not nearly as clever as you believe yourself to be, and I know you didn't think this through nearly as well as you should have. I started up the stairs, carrying Lily toward the light and warmth of the house above. At the landing, I turned back to look at him one last time. For the record, I said, I would have given you joint custody. I would have split assets fairly. I would have worked out a reasonable support arrangement that respected both our contributions to this family. His face was pale in the harsh basement lighting, and I could see tears starting to form in his eyes. Too little, too late. But you decided to involve our daughter. You decided to traumatize her. You decided that winning was more important than her well-being, that your wounded pride was worth more than her sense of safety and trust. I paused, making sure he understood. That was your grave mistake. I carried Lily upstairs to the kitchen, setting her on the counter while I examined her wrists under the bright overhead lights. The marks were already fading from angry red to dull pink, more frightening than permanently damaging, thank God. I got ice from the freezer and wrapped it in a dish towel, then held it gently against her skin. Does that help? I asked. She nodded, not trusting her voice yet. Her eyes kept darting toward the basement door, as if she expected Torres to come back. Expected the nightmare to continue. She's gone, I said softly. She's never coming back. I promise. What about Daddy? The question I'd been dreading. How do you explain to a 9-year-old that her father had orchestrated her own terrorization? How do you maintain any kind of relationship between them after something like this? Daddy made some very bad choices tonight, I said carefully. He's going to have to face the consequences of those choices. Is he going to jail? I don't know, baby. Maybe. Probably. He did things that were against the law. She absorbed this with the strange resilience children sometimes show in the face of adult failures. Will I still see him? Do you want to see him? She thought about it with the seriousness of someone much older than 9. I don't know. Not for a while, maybe. Not until I stop being scared that he might do it again. Smart girl. Smarter than her father, certainly. 2 hours later, Marcus's car pulled out of our driveway for the last time, loaded with hastily packed belongings and broken dreams. I watched from the kitchen window while Lily slept upstairs, finally exhausted by trauma and relief in equal measure. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You think you won tonight, but you have no idea what's coming. I smiled as I typed back, yes, it is. And if you contact me or my daughter again, I'll have you arrested for harassment. Your fake deputy friend is probably already talking to real police. I'd be more worried about your own problems than mine. Then I blocked the number, took a screenshot of the conversation for my lawyer, and went upstairs to check on my daughter. She was curled up in her bed, clutching the stuffed elephant she'd had since she was 2. Mr. Peanuts, she'd named him, back when she'd thought peanuts were the funniest thing in the world. In sleep, her face had lost the haunted expression she'd worn in the basement. She looked peaceful. Safe. Like a child should look. I sat in the chair beside her bed, the same chair where I'd read her bedtime stories since she was old enough to understand words. The same chair where I'd comforted her through nightmares and sickness and the ordinary fears of childhood. Now I had to figure out how to help her through the extraordinary fear of adults who couldn't be trusted, of parents who might hurt you for reasons you couldn't understand. My phone rang softly. I glanced at the screen, my sister Kate, probably calling to check on how the business trip had gone. I let it go to voicemail. There would be time for explanations later, time for the long process of helping Lily heal and rebuilding our lives without Marcus. Tonight was for standing guard. For being present. For making sure my daughter knew that whatever happened, however the adult world failed her, I would always be here. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and court filings and the complex machinery of divorce. There would be depositions and discovery and battles over every aspect of our former life together. There would be therapy sessions and careful conversations about trust and safety. There would be reporters, probably, once word got out about the fake deputy and the child restraints and the elaborate fraud. Marcus's little scheme was going to make headlines, and not the kind he'd wanted. But tonight, my daughter was safe in her own bed, and the people who had threatened her were gone. Outside, October wind rattled the windows, but inside was warm and quiet and secure. I pulled a blanket over Lily's sleeping form and smoothed her hair back from her forehead. She stirred slightly at my touch. "Mom?" she whispered without opening her eyes. "I'm here, baby. Are you going to stay?" "As long as you need me to." "Forever?" I thought about all the ways that word could be interpreted. Forever until she grew up and didn't need me to stand guard anymore. Forever until the nightmares stopped and she could sleep without fear. Forever in the sense that no matter what happened, no matter how far apart life took us, I would always be her mother and she would always be my daughter. Forever, I promised. She smiled without opening her eyes and drifted back towards sleep. I stayed in that chair until dawn, watching her breathe and thinking about the difference between justice and revenge. About the things we do for love and the prices we pay for protection. About the grave mistakes people make when they underestimate the lengths a mother will go to keep her child safe. The morning light crept through the curtains like hope itself, painting everything in shades of gold and possibility. Somewhere in the city, Marcus was waking up alone in a hotel room, probably already regretting the choices that had brought him there. Probably already crafting his defense, his explanations, his justifications for why terrorizing a 9-year-old had seemed like a reasonable strategy. Somewhere else, Torres was learning that impersonating an officer and restraining a child carried serious federal charges, regardless of who paid for the performance. Her little side business in fake law enforcement was about to become a full-time legal nightmare. But here, in this room, in this moment of quiet morning light, none of that mattered. My daughter was safe. She was breathing steadily in her own bed, surrounded by her books and toys and all the ordinary magic of childhood. The stuffed animals that lined her shelves stood like small guardians, witnesses to the fact that sometimes love really was enough. Sometimes mothers really could save the day. My phone buzzed softly against my leg. A text from my law partner. Saw the news alert. "Are you and Lily okay? Do you need anything?" The news alert. Right. Marcus's little performance had probably triggered some automatic reporting system when Torres's fake police car was spotted leaving a residential area at high speed. Or maybe a neighbor had called in suspicious activity. Either way, the story was already getting out. I typed back, "We're fine. Taking tomorrow off. We'll explain everything Monday. Take the week, take 2 weeks. I'll handle your caseload." I smiled at the phone. Good partners were hard to find, and Janet had always had my back during the difficult times. She'd be horrified when she learned the full story, but she'd also understand why I'd done what I'd done. She had kids too. Another text, this one from an unknown number. "Sarah, this is Detective Martinez, Riverside County Sheriff. We have Torres in custody. Need to interview you and your daughter when you're ready. No rush." A real detective. A real investigation. Torres's night was about to get much worse. I typed back, "Thank you. We'll call this afternoon to schedule." The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across Lily's room. Soon she'd wake up and we'd have to start the long process of healing from last night's trauma. There would be questions I couldn't answer and fears I couldn't immediately dispel. There would be therapy and legal proceedings and the slow work of rebuilding trust in a world that had revealed itself to be more dangerous than she'd known, but we'd do it together. One day at a time, one conversation at a time, one small victory at a time. My phone rang again. This time I recognized the number, my mother, probably having seen whatever news report was already circulating. "Hi, Mom." "Sarah? Honey, I just saw something on the news about a police investigation at your address. Are you and Lily all right?" I could hear the worry in her voice, the maternal instinct that never really goes away no matter how old your children get. "We're fine, Mom. It's complicated. Marcus and I are getting divorced." "Oh, honey." A pause. "Do you need me to come up there?" I looked at Lily, still sleeping peacefully despite everything that had happened. Did we need help? Probably. Did we need family around us while we figured out how to move forward? Definitely. Actually, yes. If you could come for a few days, that would be wonderful. I'll be there by noon. Should I bring anything? Just yourself. And maybe some of those chocolate chip cookies Lily loves. Consider it done. Sarah? Yeah, Mom? Whatever happened, whatever Marcus did, you did the right thing protecting her. I felt tears prick at my eyes for the first time since this whole nightmare began. How do you know I protected her? Because you're her mother. It's what we do. After we hung up, I sat in the growing morning light and let myself cry. Not from sadness, exactly, but from relief. From the recognition that the worst was over, that we'd survived the thing that had threatened to destroy us. From the overwhelming gratitude that my daughter was safe and whole and sleeping peacefully in her own bed. The tears felt good. Cleansing. Like washing away the last residue of the life I thought we were living and making space for whatever came next. Lily stirred as the sun reached her face, blinking slowly awake. For a moment she looked confused, disoriented. Then she saw me sitting beside her bed and smiled. "You stayed," she said. "I told you I would. I had a dream that everything was okay. That Daddy was sorry and that lady was gone and we were safe. That wasn't a dream, baby. That's real life." She sat up in bed, suddenly more alert. "Really? It's over?" "The scary part is over. There's still going to be some complicated stuff with lawyers and courts and things, but you don't have to worry about any of that. That's grown-up stuff. Your job is just to be 9 years old." She considered this seriously. "Can I still see Daddy sometime? Even if you did bad things?" The question I'd been dreading but knew was coming. How do you explain to a child that her father had orchestrated her own terrorization while still preserving some possibility of a relationship between them? "I don't know yet, sweetheart. That's going to depend on a lot of things. But if you want to see him someday, if you decide you're ready for that, we'll figure out a way to make it safe." "What if I'm never ready?" "Then you're never ready, and that's okay too. This is your choice, not mine or his or anyone else's." She nodded gravely, processing this information with the seriousness of someone much older than her years. "Mom?" "Yeah? I'm proud of you for saving me." The simple words hit me like a physical blow, and I had to blink back fresh tears. "I'm proud of you for being so brave." I wasn't brave. I was scared the whole time. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared, baby. It means you do what you have to do even when you are scared. And you did everything exactly right. You didn't give up, you kept calling for me, you didn't believe them when they said I wasn't coming home. She smiled at that, a real smile that reached her eyes for the first time since I'd found her in the basement. "Are you hungry?" I asked. "We could make pancakes." "The Mickey Mouse ones?" "The Mickey Mouse ones." She bounced out of bed with something approaching her normal energy, and I followed her downstairs to the kitchen. The basement door was closed now, and I made a mental note to keep it that way for a while. There was no reason for either of us to go down there until the memories had time to fade. As I mixed pancake batter and Lily chattered about her plans for the weekend, I found myself thinking about resilience. About how children sometimes recover from trauma faster than adults, how they can compartmentalize and move forward in ways that astonish the grown-ups around them. But I also thought about vigilance. About the fact that Marcus was still out there somewhere, probably already planning his next move. About the possibility that this wasn't really over, just paused. About the long road ahead of us as we navigated divorce proceedings and custody battles and the slow process of rebuilding our lives. My phone rang while I was flipping pancakes. "Detective Martinez." "Miss Chen? Sorry to call so early, but I wanted to update you on the Torres situation." "What's happening?" "She's talking. A lot. Turns out she's not a deputy at all. She's a security guard who got fired from 3 different companies for excessive force complaints. She's been running this fake police scam for about 6 months, mostly targeting women in custody disputes." I felt my blood run cold. How many other families has she done this to? "We're still investigating, but at least 4 that we know of. Your situation is actually the first one where the mother came home early and disrupted the plan. Usually, the women come home to find their kids traumatized and evidence planted, just like your husband intended. 4 other families. 4 other children terrorized by fake police while their fathers recorded evidence for custody battles. The scope of it made me feel sick. What about Marcus? We're issuing a warrant for his arrest this morning. Conspiracy to commit kidnapping, child endangerment, filing false police reports, conspiracy to impersonate a peace officer. He's looking at serious prison time." "Good," I said, and meant it. "What do you need from us?" "Whenever you and your daughter are ready to give statements, we'll need detailed accounts of what happened. But there's no rush. We have Torres's confession and your husband's recording of the whole thing. Pretty solid case. His recording. Right. Marcus had been so convinced he was gathering evidence against me that he documented his own crimes in high definition." "Detective? How did you find Torres so quickly?" "Anonymous tip. Someone called in a report of a fake police car leaving your neighborhood at high speed. By the time we located the vehicle, she was already falling apart. These amateur operations don't hold up well under real pressure." After we hung up, I served Lily her Mickey Mouse pancakes and watched her eat with something approaching normal appetite. She was going to be okay. Probably better than okay, in the long run. Children are remarkably resilient when they have at least one adult they can trust completely. "Mom?" she said around a mouthful of pancake. "Yes, baby?" "When Grandma gets here, can we tell her about last night?" "Do you want to tell her about it?" She thought for a moment. "I think so. It might help to talk about it with someone else who loves me." Smart girl. Talking about trauma, processing it with people who care about you, that was exactly the right instinct. We can tell her whatever you want to tell her. And we don't have to tell her anything you don't want to talk about. What if she's angry at Daddy? She probably will be angry at Daddy. Grown-ups get angry when children are hurt, especially when other grown-ups do the hurting. Will she be angry at me? The question broke my heart. Oh, sweetheart. No one is angry at you. No one could ever be angry at you for what happened last night. You didn't do anything wrong. Not one single thing. She nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. The irrational guilt that trauma survivors often carry, the sense that they must have somehow brought the bad thing on themselves. We'd need to work on that. Therapy would help, but mostly it would just take time and repeated reassurance. Time for her to really believe that she was the victim, not the cause. Time for her to trust that the people who loved her would always see her as precious and innocent and worth protecting. My mother arrived at 11:30, as promised, with a container of chocolate chip cookies and a suitcase that suggested she was planning to stay longer than a few days. She took one look at my face and Lily's too bright smile and immediately understood that whatever had happened was serious. Kitchen, she said after hugging us both. Coffee. Now. So we sat around the kitchen table, 3 generations of women who'd learned the hard way that sometimes you can't trust the men in your life to protect what matters most, and I told the story. All of it. The fake deputy, the restraints, the planted evidence, the recording. Marcus's elaborate plan to destroy my reputation and steal our daughter. My mother listened without interruption, her face growing harder with each detail. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. That son of a, she said finally, and Lily's eyes went wide at hearing Grandma swear. Language, Mom, I said automatically. No. Absolutely not. There is no appropriate language for what that man did to my granddaughter. Son of a gun is actually quite restrained, considering. She turned to Lily, her expression softening. Are you okay, sweetheart? Really okay? Lily nodded. I was scared, but Mom saved me. She was really brave. I'm sure she was. Your mom has always been fierce when it comes to protecting the people she loves. What's going to happen to Daddy? My mother looked at me, and I nodded. Lily deserved honest answers, age-appropriate but truthful. He's going to get in very serious trouble with the police and the courts, my mother said gently. What he did was against the law, and when grown-ups break the law, they face consequences. Will I still have a daddy? The question that had been lurking underneath all the others. The one that got to the heart of what this meant for Lily's future, her identity, her sense of family. You'll always have a daddy, I said carefully. But your relationship with him is going to be different now. Changed. It might take a long time to figure out what that looks like. Can daddies stop being daddies? Biologically? No. You'll always be his daughter and he'll always be your father. But being a good daddy is about more than biology. It's about making choices that protect and love and support your child. Last night, Daddy made choices that did the opposite of that. She absorbed this with the gravity of someone much older, and I was reminded again of how much this experience had aged her. How much innocence she'd lost in one terrible evening. But there was strength there too. A core of resilience that I recognized from my own childhood, from the moments when my mother had shown me that women could be both gentle and fierce, both nurturing and dangerous when circumstances required it. I think, Lily said slowly, I want to be angry at him for a while. That's okay, I said. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to feel however you feel about what happened. How long do I get to be angry? As long as you need. There's no time limit on feelings, baby. She nodded seriously, then took a bite of cookie. These are really good, Grandma. Thanks, sweetheart. There are plenty more where those came from. We spent the rest of the day doing normal things. Watching movies, playing board games, making lunch together. Simple activities that helped restore a sense of routine and safety. My mother was perfect, present without being overwhelming, supportive without being dramatically emotional. That evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Mom and I sat on the front porch with glasses of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. How are you really doing? She asked. I thought about it. Relieved, mostly. And grateful. And angry as hell, but trying not to let Lily see that part. You don't have to hide your anger from her entirely. Kids need to see that the adults in their lives take their safety seriously enough to get upset when it's threatened. I know. It's just. She's been through enough. She doesn't need to deal with my rage on top of her own trauma. Your rage isn't separate from her trauma, honey. It's a response to it. It's proof that what happened to her matters, that she matters. I sipped my wine and considered this. He really thought he could win. He really believed that terrorizing our daughter was a reasonable strategy for getting what he wanted. Men like Marcus don't see children as fully human, my mother said quietly. They see them as assets to be won or lost, as tools to be used against their ex-wives. The idea that Lily has her own feelings, her own trauma, her own right to safety, that doesn't register. How did I marry someone like that? How did I not see it? Because he hid it well. Because he was probably different when you met him, or at least better at pretending to be different. And because you were young and in love and you believed that people who claimed to love you would act with love. The wine was making me philosophical, or maybe it was just the exhaustion of the last 24 hours catching up with me. I keep thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't come home early, I said. If I'd stuck to the original plan and returned tomorrow afternoon. But you did come home early. Your instincts told you something was wrong and you listened to them. What if I hadn't? Then you would have found your daughter traumatized and evidence planted in your house, and you would have had to fight the battle from a much more difficult position. But you still would have fought it, and you still would have won. How can you be so sure? My mother smiled. Because you're my daughter. Because I raised you to be strong and smart and absolutely ruthless when it comes to protecting what matters most. Because you're a mother yourself now, and mothers don't give up. We sat in comfortable silence as the sky darkened and the first stars appeared. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, lawyers and court appearances, and the complex process of disentangling a life shared with someone who had revealed himself to be capable of unthinkable cruelty. But tonight, sitting on my own front porch with my mother beside me and my daughter sleeping safely upstairs, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel again for a long time. I felt victorious. Not happy, exactly. There was too much damage to repair, too much trust to rebuild. But victorious in the way that survivors are victorious, scarred but standing, wounded but still breathing, forever changed but fundamentally unbroken. Marcus had made his grave mistake when he decided to involve our daughter in his revenge fantasy. He'd underestimated the lengths I would go to protect her, the resources I could bring to bear when pushed too far, the simple fact that threatening my child was the one thing guaranteed to turn me from a reasonable woman into something much more dangerous. Now he would spend years in prison thinking about that mistake. And Lily and I would spend those same years building something better than what we'd had before, a life based on truth instead of manipulation, on love instead of strategy, on the unshakable foundation of a mother's promise to always, always come home.